Okay, hello. This is AGEOD's Civil War II. It is known by some, or considered rather by some, to be the most difficult strategy Civil War game made. My intention is to play as the Union on a quite difficult difficulty. And so my intention is really just to have fun, because I really enjoy this game. It is to play it from the main campaign, from start of the firing on Fort Sumter through to the end. And the end may be the victory of the Union or its defeat. Um, this first section, I hope, I will try to explain the settings I'm playing on, the general strategy that I will take, and just, I think, minor explanations of how this game works, because it is very complex, and there are other videos that do a really good job in explaining it. So, first, for media, I don't think any of this is really relevant to the settings of the game itself, except that, I have sound on with music on. With regard to the game, the fog of war is on. Commitment delay is set to, I think, normal. Oh, small delays here. Foreign entry is normal. Historical attrition is set to standard. Replacements are automated. Battle planner is on. Activation rule is set to veteran, I believe. Is that how that works? Okay. Generals are not randomized. Naval blockades and boxes are, I believe, automated. This is what it means. We are only playing with historical units. Easy supply is on. There is a low traffic penalty. AI is on. We are going to attempt to win on kernel difficulty. Behaviors are off. Activation bonus for the AI is set to 1, as is the detection bonus. Aggressiveness is normal, and we will give the AI more time. Systems, I think this is also not really relevant to us at the moment. So, those are the settings. We will play a new game. We are going to play the full campaign. This is starting in April of 1961, and we're going to play as the Union. Great. So, start us off here with a focus on Fort Sumter. Historically, this was the what's known as the first shot fired in the Civil War. Units under PGT Beauregard took these forts and eventually fired upon Fort Sumter. I believe a month or two later, the fort surrendered. But let's zoom out. We are in early April of 1861. When I click this button to proceed to the next turn, the game will process 15 days of movement orders and other orders that each side has given. So again, each turn is 15 days, and so there will be 2 turns of every month. There are different modes of maps that we can look at. it's an older game. I don't know exactly when this was released, but it is not. The UI, frankly, is not friendly, and that contributes to the challenging. Well, it's a barrier to entry for a lot of folks. But what we're looking at here is already quite daunting. You've got a huge map of the United States and how it looked back in the 1860s. There, again, are modes that you can look at. I pressed the number 1 on my keypad, and you are able to see a political map of the states that basically refers to what territories are owned by who. Press 2. What does 2 do? Oh, okay, regions where supplies can pass. 3 refers to strategic towns and objectives. Allegiances is 4. The state borders are 5, and etc., etc. I think most relevant to us is 1 and maybe 2. I don't remember. Honestly, I think 2 is important for supplies, and 1, of course, is important to determine who controls what. If I'll scroll a little closer here, we see that DC is here, and Alexandria is here. American flags fly over both at the moment, and the Confederate battle flag flies over much of the South. I'll try to scroll out as much as I can. This is, I think, the most that I can scroll out, and there is a strategic map on the bottom left-hand corner. So if I click, let's say here, there's a delay, but it brings me to the westernmost theater of the Civil War. There is the West Coast is modeled on these boards. It looks like there is the map itself is sort of cut off along New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. And so if we wanted to sort of see what's being stationed in California at the moment, we have to look at these boards here, and they're modeled in this way. So in Northern California, we've got a infantry regiment and an artillery piece. This is, what's it modeling? Sacramento. Central California models San Francisco. Southern California models Los Angeles, and so on and so forth. And so we can talk about this later, but this is the eventual route that we'll take to fight along, to eventually take El Paso and breach into Texas. Again, this can be quite daunting, and looking at it, it already kind of is, and I'm trying to think about a way in which to describe and explain what I intend to do without getting really bogged down into the minutia of how this game functions. So on the top left, you see here that you can press this button to recruit folks. Here are your unit cards. You can drag and drop to recruit this volunteer unit in the state of Maryland. There's also a decision map, and there's an atlas. There's a lot. There's also an indicator for national morale. If you continue looking on here, there are victory points, the money that I have at the moment, the number of people I can recruit, my war supplies, my rail points. Rail points, and in here, river points, they model the industry that I have in the north to transport troops by rail or by river. Both of those things are incredibly important to our war effort in getting folks to the right places in the right time. And here is the foreign entry level. I don't think that this is very important for us at the moment because my intention is to win. And as we win, there is a less likelihood that nations like Britain and France will enter on the side of the Confederates. So, with that said, a bit about, I think, my strategy. President Lincoln, and I think much of the country, sought for this war to be a quick one. I don't think it will be in this game. We are playing on a quite difficult difficulty, and I believe that it'll be a war of attrition, much like how it played out in real life in the 1860s. We will have to wear down the South with blood and money and resources. And so I think the first year, and maybe even 2 years, will be one where the North will be on the defensive, and we will be receiving waves and waves of Confederate attacks along Virginia and Maryland and the Mississippi. With regard to geography, the war is divided, or rather defined, by the geography of the United States. The first is the Eastern Theater, or the main theater. It is referred to as the main theater, at least in my mind's eye, because both capitals are situated in this theater, that being Washington, D.C., and Richmond, Virginia. If we capture Richmond, the South's will to fight decreases. Much of its recruitment and industry is in Richmond. Historically, Richmond fell, and quickly thereafter, the war ended. That's not to say that the capture in and of itself resulted in the war ended. Again, I think the attrition over the course of 4 years played the biggest part in the victory of the Union. But one of the ways in which the North was able to press that home was the capture of Richmond. The second theater, with regards to the first theater, it is defined by the Eastern Seaboard and the ability or inability of the North and the South to move troops along the seaboard with ships, and on the west side, bracketed by the Appalachian Mountains. Importantly, there is a valley in Virginia called the Shenandoah Valley. These mountain ranges run north to south, approximately. The northern entry point is Harper's Ferry, currently controlled by the Confederates. The southern entry point is Winchester, I believe. Newmarket. Winchester is here. It is Newmarket, and then into Rockbridge. So much of the fighting, I think, will happen in this area. Fairfax, Loudoun, Manassas, Falmouth, Fredericksburg, Culpeper. This is the main theater, in my opinion, in my assessment. The second theater, as I scroll west with my arrow keys, is what was historically called as the West. I think I will refer to as the Mississippi. The Mississippi River starts all the way out here, I think in Wyoming, and it cuts west to east, down, and then into St. Louis here, and then turns south to divide the nation. I can try and highlight this with my map, and the game here models it as a navigable river, so that's a good way to sort of see the Mississippi. But again, it comes from way up here, out in the plains, rolls west to east, and then at St. Louis, it turns south and bisects the eastern states and these western states here. And it rolls right on down south to New Orleans. So the second theater is defined by the Mississippi River here. What is Kentucky here, currently still neutral at this time of the war. And again, the Appalachian Mountains to the east. Once the Union is able to puncture defensive lines along Kentucky and Tennessee, we will truly enter the Deep South and hopefully wreak havoc and bisect the Confederate states. These states being Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas, and in the east, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, here, Alabama, and Tennessee, here. So that is the second theater. The third theater is just a little west to that. It is defined by the Mississippi River, again here, from St. Louis down through New Orleans, and all the way through to Texas. The south, again, is defined by the Gulf of Mexico. And so these parts are Louisiana, Arkansas, parts of modern-day Oklahoma, and Texas. That is a third theater. The fourth, very small and probably, well, in fact, very insignificant theater to the grand scheme of the war, is the far western theater, which would include places like California, Arizona, New Mexico, and into West Texas. My intention is to follow the historical strategy of the Union, which is to, again, bisect the South along the Mississippi River from St. Louis to New Orleans, and prevent the free flow of troops between the western states and the eastern states, and attrit down the Confederacy. The North is endowed with great resources and manpower, and the South lacks it comparatively. So with that said, I think that we should talk a bit more about troops and how we move them and what they mean. And then after that, I think we start playing the game. So, as you can see here, the Union Army, or really the American Army in 1861, is very small. We have troops out here in the west. These are cavalry units. There is a garrison of infantry and artillery in St. Louis. George McClellan is in Cincinnati, Ohio. What else do we have? We've got one infantry regiment in DC. The Potomac Squadron consists of a frigate and a transport. We've got General Winfield Scott in DC, and we've got some reserves. This is a supply unit, this is an engineer unit, and this is an artillery unit. And that's it. That's all that's in DC. So suffice to say that this is a very small army, and over the course of these next 3 to 4 years, we will multiply that exponentially. The armies in this game consist of these unit cards. This models a battery, this being this artillery piece, this 10-pounder, models a battery. This infantry regiment models in a regiment. And if I click on recruitment, you can see that I can recruit a whole brigade of infantry. I can recruit, or I can build more artillery pieces. I can also recruit more volunteers. And that's all at the moment, because the war really hasn't started. Fort Sumter hasn't been fired on yet. So, one important thing to note are these numbers next to the unit card. They refer to the combat power of the unit card. Because this is a brigade of regular Union infantry, it has a combat power of 42. This is compared to the combat power of these volunteers from the state of New York. That is 15. And so if these two go head to head, more likely than not, the regular infantry brigade will come out on top. And as you can see, if I hover over the unit card, it will tell me how much it costs in money, conscripts, war supply, and how long it would take for this unit to form up. And once these units are formed on the map of this game, I am then able to combine them, like here, for example, in the Washington Reserves, into armies, into divisions, into armies. And so there are three separate commands in DC: the War Department, the Regiment, and the Reserves. I can click and hold this War Department unit, and actually I can do this on the map as well. I can combine them if I hover. Click and hold, and if I let go, it'll combine, but I find it's easier to do so on this UI piece. So I'll click and I'll hold,